I wish them the very best.
Jennifer Lopez's ex, Alex Rodriguez, just spoke out about her divorce from Ben Affleck, but the message he posted was actually pretty cryptic. What did A-Rod mean to say with his mysterious post? And why didn't he just speak out directly instead? Alex Rodriguez broke his silence about JLo's divorce from Ben Affleck. And if you don't know, A-Rod and JLo used to be a couple before she got together with Ben. And their history together is pretty dramatic, but not in the same way that the stories of exes usually are. It's not that the two of them aired out all of their dirty laundry publicly for everyone to see. No, they actually tried pretty hard to keep their private business private. But the thing is, there wasn't a very long time at all between JLo and A-Rod's breakup and her getting together with Ben. There were only a couple of weeks in between during which JLo was single, and obviously they weren't going to say anything like this officially. But it almost looked like JLo might have left A-Rod for Ben. And I mean, you couldn't really blame him if he was a little salty about that. Even now that it's been a few years since then, but so far he hasn't had too much to say about JLo's latest divorce. He's been pretty much completely silent on the topic, except for one thing and one thing only. He posted a quote on his Instagram stories on the very day that the news broke about JLo finally filing for divorce. And it really seems like he was making a pointed comment about the situation. I mean, he hasn't said that the post was related to JLo's divorce, but a lot of people think that it clearly was, since the timing made it pretty obvious. The only thing is that the quote he shared was actually pretty cryptic. It's not entirely clear what A-Rod was actually trying to say with it. The quote reads, "You either go one way or the other. You might as well be the one deciding the direction," which definitely seems to be a comment about JLo and Ben's divorce, but it could actually mean several different things. The quote is all about being at a crossroads in life and having to choose a way to go. And this is obviously kind of the situation that JLo was in, deciding whether or not she should file for divorce. And in her case, she decided that she was gonna take that step and leave the relationship with Ben. Even looking from the outside, it was obvious that she wasn't very happy in the marriage. So the decision she made was ultimately for her own happiness, but it must have still been a pretty difficult one. But the thing is, JLo definitely was the one deciding the direction of her life from now on, just like the quote says, especially since she filed for the divorce all on her own and personally. She didn't hire a lawyer to do it for her, which is what would be expected most of the time in this situation, especially because JLo is very famous and definitely has the money to hire a lawyer. But she still decided not to go through one and do things personally, which was honestly a pretty amazing power move. So I actually think A-Rod might have been trying to compliment JLo on making such a move, and that's why he posted the quote, which would be a really nice and wholesome thing to do, especially considering their history together. JLo and A-Rod broke up back in 2021, but the thing is, their relationship was actually pretty serious. The two of them weren't just dating, they were engaged. And worse, they had been for 2 whole years before they ultimately decided to end their relationship. And just a few weeks after that, JLo got together with Ben. So you can see how that situation would probably have been really upsetting to A-Rod. But it all gets so much worse, because JLo actually got back together with Ben. He was already one of her exes when she was with A-Rod, and a long time ago, she had even been engaged to him. They were actually planning to get married back in 2003 already, but then they decided to call off the wedding and break up. And maybe they should have done that the second time around too, because it's not like their marriage went very well at all. They were only married for about 2 years, and for a pretty big chunk of that, it was very obvious that things weren't going great for them, and the divorce has honestly been coming for a long time. It's really more of a surprise that it has taken JLo this long to file for it, and maybe at this point, A-Rod is just happy for her and that she was able to take a step out of a bad situation. But that's obviously just one of the possible theories. There's a whole other angle on things, and this one is nowhere near as wholesome. Because when the quote said, "You either go one way or the other," what A-Rod could have actually meant by that was Ben and himself. He might have been trying to say that JLo would either be with Ben or with him. And that's a way more toxic thing to say than a cryptic message of approval, because obviously that's not how things work. JLo is her own person, and it's not like she exists only to end up with one of these men. So for A-Rod to practically say it's either Ben or me, and you might as well choose me, would be extremely disrespectful. But obviously, there is no actual evidence that that's what he meant to say. This is just one of those theories about what the quote could possibly mean, but it would make at least a certain kind of sense, because it definitely seems like 3 years ago, JLo left A-Rod for Ben. And now that she's leaving Ben, A-Rod might be thinking that it's time for her to go back to him. But there's one reason why this is unlikely to be what he actually meant, because as far as we know, ARod is actually in a relationship of his own. He's dating JLo, a Canadian fitness coach. They announced the relationship back in December 2022. And just recently, ARod shared a series of posts on Instagram from his birthday vacation for his 49th. And it's obvious that JLo is very much still present in his life. From the pictures, the two of them seem to be pretty happy together. So it's actually really unlikely that he was trying to imply that he and JLo should get back together now that she's officially single. But the thing is, there is actually a pretty good chance that the quote he posted on his stories was not related to JLo and Ben at all. The timing was practically perfect for it to be a comment on the divorce news, but there's actually a perfectly good explanation as to what ARod was trying to do by posting the quote. Because the thing is, that's actually his own quote. ARod was the one who said this some time ago, and he was actually sharing an inspirational post from a page called The Concept. They used ARod's quote in one of their posts. And then ARod himself saw the post and decided to share it on his story, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. It's a quote that he said, and it's even attributed to him in the post. So of course, he would want to share the post to his story and show it to his followers. He was probably pretty happy that the Concept thought that his quote was good and decided to make a post out of it. And the only thing was that this all happened on the very same day that the news broke about JLo filing for divorce. So when people saw that ARod shared this quote on his story, they obviously assumed that it was about the divorce news, but it's actually been confirmed that he wasn't trying to comment on the divorce at all. People magazine spoke to a source close to ARod, and the source specifically said that the quote in his story had nothing to do with JLo and Ben's divorce. But what do you guys think? Do you think the source is telling the truth and the whole thing was just a coincidence? Or do you think ARod was actually making a comment about the divorce and now he's trying to take it all back? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below.